Hello, everyone. I'm going to give you a brief overview of record keeping. Some of the topics we're going to discuss today are administrative records, operating cost records, maintaining records of costs and tracking funds, and you will hear from Ms. Loria later on the meal count records. Administrative records. The sponsor must maintain all program financial records documenting program income and program expenses, such as invoices and receipts, bank statements, checking account ledgers, program reimbursement payments received, program advance payments received and interest earned, funds occurring to SFSP, and disbursements to sponsor facilities to ensure documentation of the nonprofit food service account to ensure the physical integrity of the SFSP funds paid to the sponsor. Other administrative records include administrative costs, training records, site visits, and review records. Administrative costs include but are not limited to costs incurred for planning, organizing, and administrating the program. Activities include preparing and applying for participation, establishing the eligibility of open or restricted open sites by collecting the required data, attending training provided by the state agency, hiring and training site and administrative personnel, visiting sites, reviewing and monitoring operations at sites, and documenting these visits and reviews, preparing and submitting a plan for and summary of the invitation to bid when the sponsor wants to contract with the FSMS, Food Service Management, preparing and submitting claims for reimbursement, performing other activities that are necessary for planning, organizing, and managing the program. Training records. Sponsors must keep records that document dates of training for site and administrative personnel, participation at each training session, including signed and dated attendance form or record of virtual attendees and topics covered at each training session, site visit review/review of records. Sponsors must be able to document that they have met their monitoring requirements. Monitors must submit a report for pre-operational site visits for new sites, sites that experience operational problems the previous year, and existing sites that are new to non-congregate meal service. Initial site visits conducted during the first week of the program operations, additional site visits conducted throughout the period of program operation, and monitors must submit a review report form for each site review during the first 4 weeks of the program operation. Operating costs. Operating costs are allowable costs incurred by the sponsor for preparing and serving meals to eligible children. These costs include but are not limited to the cost of food used in the program, labor, non-food supplies, and space for the meal service. Operating cost records. Food costs for on-site preparation. Supporting documentation for food should include at a minimum reports that record the amount of food received from the supplier, purchasing invoices, records of any returns, discounts, or other credits not reflected on purchase invoices, inventory records that reflect the kinds of food items at the beginning and end of inventory period. Food costs for vended programs. Sponsors must maintain records that include the signed delivery slips to support the claim for reimbursement. During meal delivery, site supervisors or designated site personnel should always determine the type and quantity of meals received, ensure that meals meet the meal pattern requirements, know any errors or differences on the delivery slip, maintain the signed detailed delivery slip to support the sponsor's claim of reimbursement. Labor costs. Costs include compensation by sponsors for labor that is required to prepare and serve meals, to supervise children during the meal service, and to clean up after the meal services. Costs may include wages, salaries, employee benefits, and the share of taxes paid by the sponsor. Sponsor must keep accurate time and attendance records for all labor costs that are attributed to SFSP. Program operating costs. These are allowable costs incurred by the sponsor for preparing, transporting, and serving meals to eligible children. Food costs, non-food supply costs, storage, processing, and transportation of food and associated supplies, food service labor costs, records and personnel activity reports, facilities and utility costs, transportation of children to the meal site. Program administrative costs. These are allowable costs incurred by the sponsor for planning, organizing, and administrating SFSP. Administrative labor costs, printing costs, mileage costs, and indirect costs. Unallowable costs. These are costs for which program funds may not be used. These include but are not limited to bad debts, payment of overclaims, fines and/or penalties resulting from program violations, entertainment costs, fundraising costs, gift, capital expenditures, the cost of meals served to administrative adult personnel or any other adults that are not in the operation of the food service, the cost of meals served to ineligible children, the cost of meals served in violation of program requirements, the cost of purchased food, including coffee or etc., for use outside of SFSP, the cost of vended meals served in excess of the approved capacities are spoiled or unwholesome or that do not meet the meal pattern requirements. Maintaining records of costs and tracking funds. Records must be maintained that document the amount and purpose of all administrative costs attributed to the summer food service program. Sponsors must be able to account for receipts, obligation, and expenditures of all summer food service program funds. Program and non-program functions must be separated or allocated properly. Retention of records. Sponsors must maintain all records for 3 years after the end of the fiscal year of operation or longer if required by the state agency. Records must be accessible to federal and state agency personnel for audit and review purposes. That includes my presentation on record keeping. If you have any questions, please send us an email to sun@alsde.edu.